Step away from the vehicle right now! Whose car is this?
The officer barks it across the concrete, locking onto the luxury sedan with immediate hostility. He steps aggressively into the parking structure, pointing a finger at the man's chest.
It's mine. Officer, I'm the guest of honor tonight.
The man answers evenly, keeping his hands open and flat.
You? A black man in a neighborhood like this owning an S-Class? Don't make me laugh, boy. Anybody can buy a tuxedo at a thrift store.
I have the registration right here in the glove box.
Shut your mouth. Your kind always has a smooth story, but you fit the description of our prowler perfectly.
Without warning, the officer spins him around and yanks his arms behind his back. He ratchets the handcuffs deep, past the safety notch, until a dark, red line bites into the bare skin of the wrist. He shoves the man's face down onto the cold trunk, pins him there, and sweeps his father's steel watch off the metal and onto the dirty concrete, leaning close to his ear. The officer spits his final words.
Trash like you doesn't belong in a car like this, and you never will.
But here is what that arrogant officer did not know. The man he had just called a car thief was a powerful federal appellate judge and a former civil rights prosecutor for the United States Department of Justice. And in exactly 47 minutes, every officer who touched this night was going to watch their careers burn to the ground. They just didn't know it yet. Welcome back to the channel. Before we go any further, drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. And if you believe that no man should ever be treated like this over the car he drives, do me one favor and tap that subscribe button, because stories like this one only get louder when we tell them together. Now, let's dive straight into how this corrupt system finally met its match. To understand how one quiet parking structure ended so many careers in 47 minutes, you have to rewind to the start of the night. Before the handcuffs, before the laugh, back to a man who almost didn't walk out to his car at all. His name is Adrian Merrick. And at 56 years old, he has the particular stillness of a man who has spent 30 years in rooms where raising your voice means you've already lost the argument. He sits on the Federal Court of Appeals now. But before the robe, he spent 11 years in the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. And you should hear that clearly, because it is the cruelest irony in this entire story. For 11 years, Adrian Merrick's job was to prosecute police officers who did to other people exactly what was about to be done to him. Tonight, though, he is thinking about none of that. Tonight he is thinking that he forgot the watch. It is sitting on the passenger seat where he left it at 6 o'clock. His father's watch. A plain steel thing. Worth less than his cufflinks, and worth more than everything else he owns put together. Elias Merrick wore that watch driving a delivery route for 29 years. In a uniform, with another man's company name stitched over the pocket, and he gave it to his son the week Adrian was sworn into the bar. With the only sentence he ever offered on the subject, he said, "Now you carry the time." Adrian meant to put it on before his speech. He got 3 steps into the ballroom, felt his bare wrist, and turned around. So that is why he is out here, in a tuxedo, with no coat, 40 yards from a podium that has his name on it, walking back into the Hartwell parking structure, because he decided to park his own car, like he has parked his own car his entire life. The valet line had been 30 deep at 6. And Adrian Merrick is simply not a man who makes another human being carry his keys when he has 2 working hands of his own. You need to understand where you are, because it matters. The Hartwell sits in Crestwood, the most expensive few blocks in the entire city, and tonight the Hartwell is hosting the annual benefit for the Meridian Foundation. 200 people, in silk and black wool, 22 tables, and on every single one of those 22 tables, there is a program. On the cover of that program, there is a photograph of a man's face, and below the face, there is one line. It reads, "The Meridian Foundation is honored to present its Lifetime Award for Civil Rights to the Honorable Adrian Merrick." His face is on every table in that room. His face is glowing 8 feet tall on the ballroom screens inside, where a tribute video has just begun to loop for a crowd that is waiting for a man who is not coming. And out here, in the dark between the marble and the cars, that same man has his father's watch in his hand, and he is turning back toward the light. That's when the kid laughs. There are 3 of them by the elevator bank. 2 departing guests, a man and a woman, flushed and loud in the good way, and a young valet named Cody, who cannot be 20 years old, holding a fan of key fobs like a poker hand. The male guest sees a black man in a tuxedo step out from between 2 cars, and he does the arithmetic that his entire life has trained him to do without ever noticing he's doing it. And he arrives at the answer. Staff. There he is. The guest says. Varm. Expansive. Already reaching. Level 2. It's the gray one. You good, and he holds out his ticket, and his fob, and a folded bill. All of it together. To the guest of honor of the evening, Adrian looks at the hand for a second. Then he says, evenly, without any heat at all, I don't work here. I'm a guest. He lifts the watch a half-inch, the closest thing to an explanation he owes anyone alive. Just getting something from my car. And Cody laughs. It isn't cruel. Exactly. And that is the thing you have to understand about the laugh. Because the laugh is the whole engine of this story. It's the laugh of a 19-year-old at something that struck him as simply, obviously funny. This guy, this car, the idea that the man standing next to a brand new S-Class actually owns it, lands in the kid's chest as a small absurdity. The way a joke lands, and the laugh is out of him, before any part of him votes on it, the departing guests catch it. Because laughter is contagious. That is its entire function. And the woman smiles into her clutch. And the man's warmth curdles half a degree into something that is not warmth, and in the space of one single breath, the whole little scene tips. From a misunderstanding into entertainment. That is the mechanism. A laugh takes an injustice, and it turns it into a show. And every person here tonight came out to be entertained. Adrian doesn't argue. He has learned, across 56 years, and 11 of them inside the Civil Rights Division, that arguing with a laugh is a category error, like trying to reason with the weather. So he simply turns, and he walks toward the light, his father's watch in his fist. And he would have made it. The ballroom is 40 yards away. His speech is in 20 minutes, except that a laugh in a concrete structure carries. And one level down, a man with a badge, and 41 use of force reports, hears it, and comes to see what's so funny. His name is Cade Brennan. He is 34 years old. He has been a police officer for 7 years. And tonight, technically, he is not being a police officer at all. Tonight he is off duty, in the press navy of an approved security detail, earning $300 in cash to stand in this parking structure and keep the members' cars safe. It is a shift that his own captain personally signed the permit for, on a form that is going to matter enormously before this night is over. And you need to know what is in Cade Brennan's file, because the entire back half of this story is sitting in that file, and almost no one has ever bothered to read it. 41 use of force reports. In 7 years, 42 civilian complaints, and 0 of them sustained. Not one. Zero. Let that number breathe for a second, because that last number is not a measure of Cade Brennan's conduct, It is a measure of a process. It is the sound a system makes when it has decided, 42 consecutive times, that the officer is the one telling the truth, and the citizen is the one who must be mistaken. And somewhere in that stack, 2 years and 2 months ago, sits complaint number 37, a 22-year-old named Darnell Osei, a nursing student, pulled out of his car in a pharmacy parking lot because he matched a description, held for 40 minutes, released without a citation, finale disposition. Unfounded. Darnell filed a form about it. That form has a signature on it. Hold on to that signature. We will come back for it. And here is the last thing, and it is the most important thing, because it is the thing this entire story exists to say out loud. What is about to happen to Adrian Merrick is not going to happen because Cade Brennan lacks information. It is going to happen in the teeth of the information. It is going to happen while the truth is standing 8 feet away in a glove box, screaming to be read. Keep that distinction burning, and do not put it down. Because everyone in this story who tries to fix things with more facts is about to learn that the facts were never the problem. Brennan comes up the ramp, unhurried. Because there is never any hurry with this. Not in his experience. And he takes in the scene the way 7 years have trained him to. The departing guests, the valet, and a man in a tuxedo, walking away from a parked luxury car, with something closed in his hand, and you already know what he says. Because you heard it at the very top of this video. Step away from the vehicle. Right now. Now watch what Adrian Merrick does. Because this is the choreography that 56 years have taught him. This is not fear. This is a protocol, written in blood, that this country has taught certain of its citizens to perform in their sleep. He does not reach. He opens his hand, slowly, so that his father's watch is sitting flat on his palm. Visible. Harmless. He keeps both hands where they can be seen at all times. And when he speaks, his voice is level, and every word is placed like a man laying stones across a river. It's mine. Officer, I'm the guest of honor tonight. I have the registration right here in the glove box. And Cade Brennan chuckles. You, a black man, in a neighborhood like this, owning an S-Class don't make me laugh. Boy, anybody can buy a tuxedo at a thrift store. There it is. The quiet part. Said out loud. Notice that Adrian offered a fact, a checkable, verifiable, 8 feet away fact. And the fact did not land on a scale that was weighing facts. It landed on a man who had already decided the registration is in the glove box. Adrian repeats. Still calm. Still level. You can read it yourself. The car is registered in my name. Shut your mouth. Your kind always has a smooth story. But you fit the description of our prowler perfectly. And there is the second turn of the screw. And this one is the flimsiest lie in the whole trade. Because Adrian Merrick knows exactly what that means. Somewhere earlier tonight, there was a report of someone prowling the cars on this level. And the description that came with it was, in its entirety, a man. In dark clothing. I'm one of 200 people in a tuxedo tonight. Officer, Adrian says quietly, every single one of us is in dark clothing. The thing in my hand is a wristwatch, and the car is registered in my name. 8 feet away. You keep saying that, because it is true, and that is when Cade Brennan spins him around. Here the story has to slow down. Because you need to see this part clearly. He yanks Adrian's arms behind his back, and he ratchets the handcuffs down. Past the notch. Past the point where they need to be, until the steel bites into the flat of the wrist, and it closes over the exact strip of bare skin, the bare watch line, where a plain steel timepiece would be sitting right at this moment. If Adrian had only remembered it at 6 o'clock, within a minute, a dark red line rises where the metal meets the skin. It is not a dramatic wound, and that is precisely why it matters. It is the kind of injury that will still be visible 11 days from now. In a photograph, on a screen, in a hearing room, small enough that the man wearing it can keep his composure, and clear enough that no one who looks at that photograph will ever be able to pretend it did not happen. And then Brennan shoves Adrian's face down onto the cold trunk, and with a careless sweep of his hand, he knocks the steel watch off the metal, and it falls, and it lands on the dirty concrete of the parking garage floor. Elias Merrick's watch. 29 years on a delivery route. Now you carry the time, lying in the dirt, next to a tire, and Adrian Merrick, pinned against his own car, does the only thing he has left to do. Just once. He closes his eyes. 2 seconds. His jaw sets. And that is the only crack you are going to get from this man tonight. And it is not for the pain in his wrists. It is for the watch on the ground. Then he opens his eyes. And he is level again. Cody, the young valet, lifts his phone. Reflex. And he gets it. The cuffs. The tuxedo. The red line. He will delete that video out of fear at 11:50 tonight. But a thing can be deleted from a phone and still exist in this world. Hold that, leaning close. The officer delivers his verdict. Trash like you doesn't belong in a car like this. And you never will. And Adrian Merrick, cheek against the cold metal, answers him in a voice so calm it should frighten every officer within 100 miles. I'd like you to note the time. Officer, it's 8:16, and I'd like you to remember that I asked you to read the registration. I'll note whatever I want to note. I'm sure you will. Now, here is a thing you must not miss. In his head, right now, pinned to that trunk, Adrian Merrick's mind is a steel trap. He is memorizing everything. The time, 8:16. The level, the name stitched on the navy chest. Brennan. The exact words. In order. He is not panicking. He is building. Piece by piece. Out of a night that has not even finished happening yet. He is assembling a federal civil rights case. Under color of law, and he does not say one word of it out loud, because here is the choice that the entire rest of this story depends on. Adrian Merrick does not tell Cade Brennan who he is. The card is in his breast pocket. His face is glowing 8 feet tall on a screen 40 yards away. And he says none of it. People are going to ask him why. And his answer is going to be the spine of this whole thing. So hold your question until the end. At 8:19, the dispatcher confirms it, because Brennan does. Eventually, run the plate. Not to check himself, to build his own paper, and the answer comes back over his shoulder radio, in the flat voice of a woman in a room across the city. Registered owner. Merrick. Adrien J. No wants. No warrants. Valid registration. Address matching the license in the wallet that Brennan has now pulled out of Adrian's own jacket. The car is his. The dispatcher says it twice, because Brennan asks her to say it twice. And now watch. Watch what a prejudice does when you hand it the truth. Brennan looks at the license in his hand. He looks at the man in the cuffs. And he says, "So you've got a wallet with this guy's name in it. You know how easy it is to lift a wallet off somebody at a fancy party like this. Read that again in your head." The registration matched. The license matched. The dispatcher confirmed ownership out loud, on a recorded channel, and the objection simply moved. From "this isn't your car" to "you stole this man's identity to pretend it's your car." There is no fact on earth that can survive that maneuver. Because the maneuver is not aimed at the facts. Give it a registration. And it demands a license. Give it the license. And the license is stolen. The goalposts are on wheels. They were always on wheels. My name is Adrian Merrick. Adrian says, very quietly. The name on the registration is Adrian Merrick. The name on the license is Adrian Merrick. How many more times would you like the truth to say the same thing before it starts to count? Brennan doesn't answer that. There is no answer to that. Instead, he keys his radio, and he calls for a unit to transport, because the thing has its own momentum now, and momentum is so much easier than admitting you were wrong. Meanwhile, inside, at 8:21, a woman named Eleanor Shaw is staring at her watch. Eleanor runs the Meridian Foundation, and she has run enough of these evenings to know the exact texture of the honoree is late. And it is starting to worry at her like a splinter. The program says remarks at 8:15. It is now 8:21. Adrian Merrick is a man who is early to his own dentist appointments. She catches the eye of Dr. Vivian Merrick at table 1, a pediatric surgeon. In Emerald Silk, Adrian's wife of 26 years, and Eleanor sees her own worry mirrored back, but sharper, because Vivian has already texted twice and watched 2 gray check marks refuse to turn blue. He went out to the car. Vivian says, for his father's watch. He should have been back 10 minutes ago. So Eleanor Shaw picks the program up off table 1, his face on the cover, and she starts walking out toward the lobby, toward the doors, toward the mouth of the parking structure, holding that program the way you hold a thing you are about to need, without yet knowing why. Keep her walking. She is going to matter more than she knows, because by 8:24, there is a crowd, not a large one. Count them. 9 people, guests, drifting out for the valet, or a cigarette, drawn by the particular gravity of a man in handcuffs, that thing that pulls human eyes the way a house fire does. 9 people, on the marble apron under the lights, watching a black man in a tuxedo stand cuffed against a black Mercedes, while an officer fills out a field card on the trunk, and on the concrete floor beside the front tire, a steel watch that no one has picked up, and 9 people do the thing that crowds do, which is nothing. And this is not because they are monsters. It is because a uniform is a permission structure, and standing in front of one is a test that most people, most of the time, quietly fail. One man, 60-ish, a donor. You can watch it happen on his face. Takes half a step forward. His mouth opens, and something in his chest does the arithmetic. What if there's something I don't know? What if this is somehow correct? And the half step unhappens, and he looks down at his shoes. Remember him. In 11 days, he will write a large check to a fund that does not exist tonight. And he will tell himself it was always who he was. It wasn't. But the check will be real. And the fund is going to need it. And behind the valet podium, Gil Amara is filming. Gil is 58 years old. He has run this valet stand for 19 years. And he has one rule that he has kept for all 19 of them. You do not leave the podium. The keys are the podium's responsibility. 200 sets of them tonight. And a man who leaves the podium is a man who comes back to a disaster. So Gil stands exactly where he has stood for 19 years. And he holds his phone up over the little counter, and he films, because some part of him that is older than his rule knows that what he is watching is going to matter someday. And the only thing a man behind a podium can do is keep the record. He films all of it, but he does not step out. Not yet. The backup unit arrives at 8:26, and her name is Rachel Ostrovsky, and she is going to fail first. You have to let her fail. It's a law of this kind of story, and it's a law of life. The only honest cop in the story is the one who was silent before she was ever brave. Because a rookie who is a hero in the very first minute is a fantasy. And fantasies never taught anyone anything. Ostrovsky has been on the street for 4 months. She rolls up, and she sees a senior officer. With 12 years of do not question me built into the set of his shoulders, and she sees a compliant man in handcuffs. And every institutional instinct she has been issued in 4 short months tells her that the veteran must have a reason, and that her job is to secure the scene, so she secures the scene. She stands where Brennan tells her to stand. And when Adrian looks at her, not begging, just looking, one adult to another, she looks away. And when he says, quietly, "Officer, there is a registration in that glove box and a license in his hand with the same name on it. I am only asking you to read them." She does the thing she is going to lie awake at 3 a.m. about for the rest of her life. She says nothing, and she looks at her boots, and she lets it keep happening. Hold on to that failure. It has a second half, and the second half is the hinge that the entire machine turns on. At 8:29, Cade Brennan gives a speech, not out loud. Exactly. Adrian asks him, evenly, the way he has asked everything tonight. Why are you doing this? And it is the wrong question to ask a man like Brennan, because it is not really a question. It is a mirror, and Brennan does not like the mirror. And so, for once, he says something completely true. You want to know what I do, he says. And there is no performance in it now. And that is what makes it frightening. I'm the line. That's the whole job. There's the world where people like these get to have their nice night. And there's everything else. All the stuff out there that wants to come in and take it. And I'm the line between the two of them. Every single night. And nobody ever thanks you for the line. They just want it to hold. He looks at Adrian. And he believes every word he is saying. And that is the horror of it. So when I see something that's off, I don't sit around waiting to feel bad about it. Off is off. 7 years I've been doing this. I know off when I see it. Give the villain his human minute. Because he is not a cartoon. He is so much worse than a cartoon. He is a man who has built, out of 7 years and 41 reports, a sincere and total philosophy, in which a black man standing beside a nice car is off, and in which his own certainty is the exact same thing as evidence. Right now, at 8:29, he means all of it. And the meaning it is the disease this whole story is trying to name. You don't know off. Adrian says, you know me. You knew me before I ever opened my mouth. And everything since has just been you, hunting for the paperwork. And for 1 second, something moves behind Cade Brennan's eyes that might, in a different man, on a different night, have become a doubt, and then the machine, which has been idling quietly this entire time, turns over, and it starts with the most boring man on the apron. The transport officer arrives at 8:31, a heavyset veteran named Pruitt, who would rather be literally anywhere else. He ambles up. He glances at the field card. And he says the single most important sentence of the entire night, without the faintest idea that he is saying it. This, the Prowler. Because dispatch cleared that call 20 minutes ago, patrol grabbed the actual guy over on the east ramp. Kid was jimmying a Honda. Had a Slim Jim on him, and everything. Pruitt yawns. Had him cuffed at 8:03. It's all in the log. Silence. Now do the subtraction. Because Adrian Merrick is already doing it. In his head. In the handcuffs. The real Prowler. An actual person. Actually breaking into an actual car. Was in custody at 8:03. Cade Brennan put his handcuffs on Adrian Merrick at 8:16. 13 minutes later, 13 minutes after the only call that could have possibly justified stopping anyone had already been resolved by someone else. On the other side of the structure, with a Slim Jim as evidence, there was never a description to match. There was a man, and a car, and a laugh, and 7 years of I know off when I see it. It's in the log, Adrian repeats, softly, and if you listen closely, you can hear the case locking into place, one confirmed timestamp at a time. Say it again for me. Officer, when exactly was the real suspect in custody? 8:03. Pruitt says, oblivious. Why? Brennan does not answer. Brennan is staring at the field card in his own hand, on which he himself has written 8:16. And for the very first time all night, there is something in his face that is not certainty. Not doubt yet. Just the first cold draft of a man realizing that the paper he has been so carefully building might turn out to be evidence of the wrong thing entirely. That is the first blow. There was no reason. The machine has said it, in a bored voice, on a recorded channel. And the machine cannot be argued with, because the machine is not trying to win anything. It is just telling the time, and at 8:33, Eleanor Shaw reaches the porte cochere, and the whole thing detonates in her eyes. She comes out of the lobby with that program still in her hand, and she sees, arranged on the marble in front of her, like a scene staged specifically to break her heart, the following: a crowd of her own guests, an officer, a steel watch lying on the concrete, and Adrian Merrick, her honoree, the man whose face is in her hand, and on 22 tables, and glowing 8 feet tall on the screens right through those doors, Adrian Merrick, in handcuffs, bent against a car, with a red line cut into his wrist. Eleanor Shaw is not a shouter, but she walks straight through that crowd of 9 people, and she raises the program up so that the cover faces the officer, so that the 8-inch photograph of the man he has cuffed is level with the actual man he has cuffed. And she says, in a voice pitched to carry exactly as far as it needs to, and not 1 inch farther, Officer, this is Judge Adrian Merrick, of the United States Court of Appeals. He is the guest of honor at the event you are standing outside of Cation. That is his photograph. On the program, on every table in that room, and on the screen you can see through those doors. A beat, cold as the concrete. Would you like to tell me what is happening here? This is the reveal. And notice how it happens. Not from Adrian's mouth, and not to Brennan's benefit. It happens in the hands of a third party, a stranger, who walked in from the side, holding a piece of paper she brought for another reason entirely. The farther the truth-teller stands from the victim, the more the floor gives way beneath everyone. And Eleanor Shaw is a stranger with a program. And that program is louder than anything Adrian himself could have said. Precisely because Adrian refused to say it, the crowd of 9 makes a sound. And now the phones come up. Not the valets this time. The guests, a dozen of them, and one of them is already live. Already streaming, to a feed that in 90 minutes is going to carry a number that no police press office on earth can ever unring. And Rachel Ostrovsky, rookie, 4 months on the street, standing exactly where she was told to stand, feels the entire architecture of the veteran has a reason collapse out from under her. All at once, Brennan looks at the program. He looks at the man in the cuffs. And he says the thing that is going to end him, because he cannot, even now, even here, stop himself. Anybody can print a program. Anybody can print a program. Let that sink all the way in. He has been handed the registration, the license, the dispatcher, and now his own honoree's face, on a foundation's official program, and he reaches for one more lie. Because the objection was never the evidence. The evidence is just the thing that has to be gotten around. And now the machine reaches for his throat. Because now, suddenly, it matters. Urgently, what was recorded here. And Eleanor Shaw says the words, "This has all been captured. Iassume. Officer, on your body camera." And Cade Brennan, without quite deciding to, says the sentence that men in his position always say, the sentence this entire kind of story is built around, because it is the sentence that proves they knew. Camera cut out. Battery died. It's been cold in here all night. Write down the time he said that. 8:36. You are going to want it in about 90 seconds, because it is not cold. This is a mild city, and a covered structure, and the battery on that camera is at 68%. And none of that is even the point. The point is the shape of the lie. The reflexive reach for the camera failed, which is the reach of a man who knows there was something the camera should never have seen. He lies about the camera first. That is always the tell. Always. And here comes the first crack in that lie. Arriving from the side. The way every true thing in this story arrives from the side. Because the Hartwell parking structure has its own cameras. 16 of them. And they are not Cade Brennan's cameras. They cannot be shut off from Cade Brennan's belt. They do not run on a battery that he can drain. And they are monitored. Off the loading dock. By a board security contractor named Ray. Who has, in fact, I've been watching this entire thing unfold on a 9-panel monitor for the last 11 minutes, and who has already pressed the button that preserves the footage, because a man in handcuffs on the property is an incident, and incidents get flagged. Camera 2 north. Camera 2 east. Time-stamped. Continuous. Nobody's battery. The venue camera does not care what Brennan's body camera did or did not do. The venue camera saw a compliant man set a watch on a trunk and put his hands flat and get a cuff ratcheted past the notch. The venue camera saw all 47 minutes of it, and the venue camera is never going to explain itself, or get nervous, or wonder if it was wrong. It is just going to sit in a hard drive and be true. Cade Brennan said the camera failed, and the world, at last count, has 17 cameras that flatly disagree, the venue's 16, and one guest's live stream, already out in the world, already climbing, but he does not know that yet. And in the 10 minutes before he learns it, this night reaches its absolute lowest point, because at 8:41, it looks like the whole thing is about to vanish. You need this part, because a story where the truth wins easily is a story that nobody believes. And every single one of you knows in your bones how these things actually tend to go. So here is how they actually go. A city SUV rolls up the ramp, unhurried, and out of it steps Captain Roy Delacroix. And Captain Delacroix is the reason that not one of Cade Brennan's 42 complaints ever went anywhere. Though no one on this apron knows that yet. Brennan feels his own shoulders come down half an inch at the sight of the man. The way a dog's do at a familiar hand, and Delacroix takes it all in with the smoothness of a man who has taken in a great many scenes exactly like this one, and made a great many of them disappear. He clocks the crowd, the phones, the program in Eleanor Shaw's hand, the judge in the cuffs, and he begins, immediately, to do the thing he is genuinely excellent at, which is to lower the temperature of a room, so that the record cools down along with it. Okay, everybody. This is a misunderstanding. Plainly. Warm. Rueful. Hands spreading wide. Your Honor. I am mortified. Let's get those off you. Right now. A snap of the fingers at Brennan. and the handcuffs come off. And this is the dangerous part. This is the part where it dies. And let me have someone escort you back inside. And I will personally make sure this is handled internally. Quietly. Tonight. No reports flying around. No ruined evenings over an honest mistake. You have my word. Let's put this whole thing to bed. And for one moment, watch. It works. The cuffs are off. Adrian rubs the raw red line on his wrist. The temperature drops. An honest mistake. Handled quietly. No reports. The guest who was live streaming is being gently, expertly steered back toward the doors. Ostrovsky is silent. Gil is behind his podium. And Eleanor Shaw is suddenly uncertain. Because quietly and internally is the thing that institutions have always offered to the powerful. And maybe the graceful thing, the thing that saves the entire gala, is to just accept the apology and walk inside and give the speech. This is the all is lost. This is the drawer marked unfounded sliding open to receive a 43rd file. Because if Adrian Merrick walks back inside now, if he lets Roy Delacroix handle this quietly, then tonight becomes exactly what happened to Darnell Osei. And 41 people before him. A thing a captain smoothed over. A record, a captain, cooled to room temperature, and filed away. In the drawer, where records go to become nothing at all. The machine is about to be switched off. Not broken. Switched off. By the one hand on this apron that knows exactly where the switch is, and Adrian Merrick, rubbing his wrist, looks at Captain Roy Delacroix, and he understands all of it. At once, and he makes the choice that everything else depends on. He says, "No. No." He says again, gently, because he is never not gentle. "Thank you, Captain. But no. Your Honor, you said. No reports." And Adrian's voice does not rise. It just becomes very, very precise. The way it becomes from the bench. When a lawyer has said the one thing that gives the entire game away. An officer held a man in handcuffs for 47 minutes tonight. That is a report. That is several reports. And the fact that your very first instinct, walking up on this, was to make sure that those reports never get written, is the single most informative thing that has happened out here all night. And a great deal has happened out here tonight. He looks at the crowd, at the phones, at the rookie, at the old man behind the podium, and at his father's watch, on the ground. I don't want this handled quietly. I have spent my entire life watching things get handled quietly. Quietly is how it survives. And then he does the thing that costs him. The thing that is the moral center of this entire story. And you have to see it clearly. Because it is the answer to the question you have been holding since the very first minute of this video. He still does not play the card. He could. Right now. Easily. Finally. Invoke all of it. The federal appellate bench. The 11 years at justice. The fact that he knows more about police liability under federal law than every officer on this apron combined. He could make this whole thing about who he is. And Captain Delacroix is practically begging him to. Because who he is a problem that Delacroix knows exactly how to solve. You apologize to power. You make power's little inconvenience disappear, and the machine goes right back to sleep. Adrian does not. Instead, he says this: I am not going to stand here and recite my title, so that you will suddenly decide to believe a registration you could have read at 8:14. If the only thing that makes this stop is a man saying the words, Your Honor. If the truth needs a rank in order to be heard, then the rank is the whole problem. I was telling you the truth when you thought I was nobody, so start from there. Silence on the apron, because that is the refusal, not the refusal of the handcuffs, the refusal of the exit. Every man in handcuffs in a story like this is offered, at some point, a door marked, "Don't worry. Not you. We didn't mean you. You're one of the good ones." And the entire moral weight of a man comes down to whether he walks through that door and leaves every single person behind him still trapped inside. Adrian Merrick puts his hand on that door, and he feels how easy it would be. And he takes his hand back off. "Write the reports," he says. "All of them." And now, because a rookie finally finds her voice, the machine fires its final round. And this is the one that ends everything. Because when Delacroix turns, smooth as glass, and says, "Rachel, you were here the whole time. This was a good faith stop, wasn't it? An honest, reasonable mistake." He is not asking her a question. He is handing her a script. He is inviting her to do the easy institutional thing. One more time. The exact thing she already did once tonight, when she looked at her boots and Rachel Ostrovsky, who failed at 8:26, who looked away when a cuffed man asked her simply to read a registration, who has been standing inside her own silence for 21 minutes. Now, feeling it curdle into something she can already tell she will never be able to live inside. Rachel Ostrowski looks at her captain, and she looks at the red line on Adrian Merrick's wrist, and she says, "No, sir, it wasn't." The apron goes absolutely still. "I got here at 8:26, she says, and her voice is shaking. And she keeps going anyway, which is the only kind of brave that is real. He was already cuffed. He was compliant the entire time I was here. He told Officer Brennan twice that the registration was in the glove box. He asked me to read it, and I didn't. And dispatch cleared the prowler call at 8:03. I heard it on the radio myself. This stop happened at 8:16. She swallows hard. That's 13 minutes after. There was no call left to answer. There was no reason. I should have said so at 8:26. I'm saying it now. That is the transforming witness. Not a hero who was always destined to be a hero. A person who was silent and felt the silence rot inside her, and chose, finally, in front of her own captain, to become the one who says the true thing on the record and understand what she has just become. She is not the judge's rescue. Adrian never needed rescuing. She is the sworn statement. She is the thing that turns a judge's word against an officer's word into an officer's own partner, under oath, describing his conduct minute by minute, and she is not finished. Because Ostrowski, unlike everyone else out here, knows exactly how body cameras work. His camera didn't cut out, she says. And now she is looking straight at Brennan, and there is something almost like grief in it. They don't just cut out. When you mute a body camera, you have to hold the button down for 3 seconds. And it logs it. The metadata logs it. The exact second you did it, if he muted his camera, it is in the record. You can pull it right now. They pull it at 9:02. And the machine says the very last thing. And the last thing is the worst thing of all, because it is not about what Cade Brennan did. It is about what Cade Brennan knew. By 9:02, there is an internal affairs detective on this apron. A sharp, unsmiling woman named Sophia Reyes, who does not owe Roy Delacroix a single thing, and who has wanted a clean shot at Cade Brennan's file for 2 years. And she reads the body camera metadata out loud. Flat. In the voice of a woman reading a verdict, she has waited a very long time to read. Manual mute. Button held 3 seconds. Logged at 8:15. And 40 seconds. 40 seconds before the handcuffs. 40 seconds before step away from the vehicle. 40 seconds before any of it. Sit with that subtraction, because it is the entire case, distilled down to nothing. A man does not mute his camera after a stop goes wrong. He mutes it before. In the 40 seconds, when he has already decided exactly how the next several minutes are going to go, and he does not want a recording of himself deciding, the dispatch log proved there was no reason. The venue's cameras proved what he did. And now, the metadata. The cold. Indifferent. 3-second. Time-stamped metadata. Proves the one thing that neither of the others could. That he knew, before he took a single step, he knew he was about to do something that he would rather no one ever heard. He silenced the record. 40 seconds before he made it. That is not a mistake. A mistake is loud. And confused. And improvised. This was quiet. And early. And deliberated. And the machine does not shout it. The machine never shouts. The machine just displays a gray timestamp on a screen. But every person on that apron hears it anyway. And Cade Brennan. 41 use of force reports. 42 complaints. 0 sustained. Finally stops talking. He does not scream. Men like him don't scream when they lose. He just stands there. In his $300 off-duty Navy, and he does the math that every man in his position eventually does. And he arrives. 7 years too late. At the answer, and now the rest happens fast. The way it always does. Once the machine has spoken, because everything before the reveal is a boulder being pushed uphill, and everything after it is that same boulder coming back down. Gil Amara steps out from behind his podium. After 19 years, he finally breaks his one rule. He walks across the apron, and he bends down, and he picks Elias Merrick's steel watch up off the dirty concrete, and he carries it, along with his phone, over to Detective Reyes, and he says, I have 19 minutes of this, from 2 different angles, and I believe this belongs to that gentleman, and he hands over the footage, and the watch. At 9:14, Sophia Reyes pulls Cade Brennan's real file, not the sanitized summary, the actual file, and the numbers come out into the light, where numbers like these almost never go. 41 use of force reports, 42 complaints, 0 sustained. And when you lay all 42 of them end to end, a shape appears. The shape that a federal pattern or practice investigation is designed to find, the shape that turns 42 individual unfounded stamps into one single word. And the word is pattern, the same grammar, every single time. A black man, a nice car, or a nice neighborhood. A description that fit 10,000 people, a search, a cuffing, a release with no charges, and a disposition of unfounded, the same story, filed 42 times, in the drawer where stories go to die. And on complaint number 37, 2 years and 2 months ago, a name, Darnell Oze, 22, a nursing student, a pharmacy parking lot, matched a description, 40 minutes in handcuffs, released without a citation. Unfounded. Remember Darnell. We are almost back to him, because at 9:31, Roy Delacroix sells Cade Brennan out. And he does it in under 60 seconds. And it is one of the ugliest and most honest things in this entire story. When Sophia Reyes turns and asks him the only question that actually matters, who signed off on 42 unfounded dispositions, and who approved an off-duty permit for an officer with 41 use of force reports, the captain, who arrived 20 minutes ago, radiating brotherhood, who called Brennan my officer, does the arithmetic of his own survival, and throws Cade Brennan into the sea without a life vest. Look, I can't. I signed dispositions. I didn't personally investigate every single one. The volume in that unit is enormous. I relied on the reviewing sergeants. If they passed it up to me clean, then I. And he is physically backing away from Brennan now. On the apron. A half step at a time. The way you back away from something you have just decided is not yours. Brennan's conduct is Brennan's conduct. If he muted a camera, I had no knowledge of that. None. You can look at every form I ever signed. And Reyes looks at him, and she says, very quietly, we're going to, because here is the truth about the brotherhood. It was never a brotherhood. It was a mutual protection arrangement, held together by shared guilt. And the instant that guilt stops being shared and starts becoming assignable, it evaporates in about 50 seconds. And Brennan watches his captain back away from him. And something moves across his face that is almost worth pitying. The desolation of a man realizing that the line he thought he was a part of never once counted him as being inside it either. And then, there is the badge on the table. Because there is always the badge on the table. It happens at 9:48. Inside, in a small service room off the ballroom, where they have moved this Poplikin 27th, so that 200 people don't have to watch a career end during the dessert course. Sophia Reyes tells Cade Brennan that he is relieved of duty, pending investigation, and that she is going to need his badge and his sidearm. And Brennan, who has not screamed, who will not scream, unpins the badge from his chest, and there is a white banquet tablecloth on the service table, and he sets the badge down on it, and it makes a sound. It is a small sound. Stamped metal. On cloth. Over wood. But it is, as it always is, the loudest sound in the entire room. Because of everything, it is the end of Call So. 7 years. 41 reports. A philosophy about being the line. A captain who is already gone. A brotherhood that turned out to be a solitary cell. The badge sits there on the white linen, and nobody picks it up. And Cade Brennan, 34 years old, walks out of the Hartwell in a navy shirt with a lighter patch over the heart where his badge used to be. Out past the doors, into the dark of the very same structure where, 94 minutes ago, he heard a laugh, and went to see what was so funny. At 10:20, a city attorney offers Adrienne Merrick $2.2 million. She is apologetic and efficient, and she has very clearly done this before. $2.2 million in recognition of a regrettable incident, in exchange for a full release of all claims and a standard confidentiality provision, standard, a settlement, and a gag order. Money. For silence? The oldest trade the powerful have ever offered. Dressed up in the softest possible language. And here is the moment that this entire night was built to earn. Because Adrienne Merrick refuses it. And it is not a refusal of the money. For the money's sake, Adrienne could not possibly care less about the money. It is a refusal of the silence. Because the silence is the exact thing that lets it happen all over again. No confidentiality agreement. Adrienne says, Your Honor, the provision is entirely standard. I know. I have read 10,000 of them. And he sets the term sheet back down on the table. Unsigned. Here is what Standard buys you. Standard buys you a version of tonight where I take $2.2 million and I go home. And Officer Brennan quietly resigns with his pension, and Captain Delacroix quietly retires. And the department issues a statement about an isolated incident. And no consent decree is ever filed. And no pattern is ever named. And in 18 months, a young man who is not a federal judge, a young man with no program with his face on it, and no foundation full of witnesses, and no wallet full of the right phone numbers, gets pulled out of his car in a parking lot by whoever inherits Cade Brennan's beat, and there is no record of tonight for that young man's lawyer to point to, because I sold it to you for $2.2 million. He slides the paper back across the table. You don't buy my silence. Keep your $2.2 million. Put it toward what I am actually going to ask you for. And what he asks for is not a prison sentence, because a prison sentence punishes one man and changes nothing. And this was never really about one man. What he asks for is a structure. He asks for a federal consent decree, independent oversight of the department's entire use of force review process, a full pattern or practice audit of every complaint disposition in that unit, going back 7 years, all 42 of Brennan's, and everyone else's too, an independent monitor who does not answer to any captain, and he wants it filed, public, on the docket, where the next lawyer, for the next young man, in the next parking lot, can find it and hold it up. I'll help you draft it. He tells her, I know the language. I have written the other side of it enough times. And they ask him, later, a reporter, carefully, why he never told Brennan who he was. 47 minutes in handcuffs. And the whole time, the card was in his pocket, and his face was on the screen. Why not just say it? And here is his answer. The answer this whole night was built to earn, because the moment I say it, it becomes a story about me. A judge got mistreated. How embarrassing. Heads will roll. And that story has a villain, and a victim, and a tidy little ending. And it protects exactly one person. And the person it protects is me. But I was never the one who needed protecting. If I say, Your Honor, and the handcuffs come off, all that proves is that the system has a VIP entrance. And I didn't want the VIP entrance. I wanted a record of what this system actually does to the people who come in through the front door. So I came in through the front door, and I let it do what it does, because that is the only thing that ever gets it onto the docket. The consent decree is filed at the end of that summer. It runs to 61 pages, and Adrian Merrick's fingerprints are on the language of 40 of them. And it does the unglamorous, structural, load-bearing things that actually change what happens in a parking lot at 8:14 at night. It puts a federal monitor over the review process. It reopens every one of the 42 dispositions. It requires that a muted body camera be treated, for disciplinary purposes, as en admission. And it ends the off-duty permit arrangement that rented Cade Brennan's badge out to the highest bidder. For $300 a night, Cade Brennan is charged, not with a headline, but with the two things the machine actually proved, making a false official statement. The camera cut out. It's been cold. And obstruction of a civil rights investigation. That 3-second mute. At 8:15 and 40 seconds, he does not go to prison for a generation. He loses the badge, the pension, the certification, and the philosophy. And he becomes the one thing he never once imagined he could be, a man that the system decided to stop protecting. And Roy Delacroix is permitted to retire, which sounds like mercy, right up until you understand that the pattern audit does not retire along with him, and that his 38 signatures on 38 buried dispositions are now 38 separate lines in a federal monitor's report, with his name at the end of every single one, and complaint number 37 gets reopened. Darnell Osei is 24 now. He finished the nursing program. He works nights in a cardiac unit, which is its own kind of standing on the line between order and chaos, except that when Darnell holds the line, somebody's grandmother lives to see the morning, and nobody films it, and nobody ever gave him a program with his face on the cover. He gets a letter, The letter tells him that a complaint he filed 2 years and 2 months ago, a complaint he had long since filed away, in that private drawer where you put the things that happened to you that nobody believed, has been reopened as part of a federal pattern or practice review, and that its original disposition, unfounded, has been officially vacated, and that his account has been entered into the record, into the docket, the public one, the one the next lawyer can find. Darnell reads that letter twice, because a letter cannot give him back the 40 minutes in that pharmacy lot, or the feeling of a stranger's hands deciding what he was, or the 2 years of quietly wondering if it had somehow been his own fault. But it can do one thing that matters more than he expected. It can make it count. It can move his 40 minutes out of the drawer marked unfounded and into the record-marked pattern, where it stops being a thing that happened to him, alone, and becomes a paving stone in the road that the next young man's lawyer gets to walk up. He was the man with no invitation, and the entire apparatus of the man who had won. The bench, the title, the foundation, the 17 cameras, the 61-page decree. All of it turns out to have been worth building for exactly one reason. Because in the end, it reached all the way down, and it picked up complaint number 37, and it wrote the word true where somebody had once written unfounded. That is what protects the man with no invitation. Not a hope, a record, a name in a docket that does not disappear the moment the powerful man goes home. There is one last scene, and it happens in a car because Adrian Merrick never did give that speech. By the time it was all over, the benefit had emptied out. The tables were cleared. The tribute video was dark on the screens, and his award, a heavy glass thing with his name etched into it, was handed to him in a service corridor by Eleanor Shaw, who did not know what to say, and so said the only true thing: "I am so sorry, and I am so glad you didn't sign anything." And then Adrian and Vivian drove home. In the car, at midnight, Vivian is quiet for a long time, and then she says, "You keep telling everyone that you're not the point. I heard you say it 4 times tonight." And she looks over at him, at the fading red line on his wrist that is going to be a photograph in a hearing room. 11 days from now, but you stood in handcuffs for 47 minutes. When one single sentence would have ended it. That is not the point. That cost you something. I watched it cost you. It did, he says, and he looks down at his own wrist, at the mark, and then at the watch. Finally, at last, back where it belongs. His father's plain steel watch, the one he walked out into the dark to get. The reason for all of it. Now you carry the time. But if the only reason any of this got fixed is that it happened to me, to a judge, on camera, with a foundation full of witnesses, then I didn't fix anything at all. I just proved that the system works exactly as designed, for exactly the people it was designed for. And a system that only works for the people it was designed for isn't broken. Vive. It's finished. It is doing the very last thing it will ever do. Perfectly. Right up until the day it does it to your son. He turns the watch a quarter turn on his wrist, the way his father used to. I don't want to be the man the system finally got right. I want to be the last one who ever had to be, before it stopped mattering who you were. And they drive on, in the quiet. So who actually won here? In the end, not him. Say it plainly, because that is what this story exists to say. Not him. The federal case, the 61-page decree, the badge on the white linen, people are going to call all of those things the victory. They aren't. They are the consequence. The victory is a rookie who stood inside her own silence for 21 minutes. And then, in front of her own captain, said, No, sir, it wasn't. Out loud. On the record, the victory is a 58-year-old valet who kept one rule for 19 years and then broke it to pick a dead man's watch up off a dirty floor and carry it home to his son. The victory is a nursing student who got a letter that finally changed the word unfounded into the word true. Those three people are the only things in this entire story that actually scale. Adrian Merrick just happened to know the language to write it all down in, so that it would still be true, long after every last one of them is gone. And down at the end of a street that could be any street, in a city that could be any city, a young man is driving home from a night shift in a car that is just a little nicer than it probably should be for a man his age. And he slows at his own driveway, out of a habit that he was taught before he was even old enough to drive. And he checks his mirror, and above his own front door, a small camera blinks its small light, recording the way half the doors on the street record now, just in case, because that is still the world we live in, a world where the honoree had an invitation in his pocket, and his face 8 feet tall on a screen. And it still took 47 minutes, and 17 cameras, and a federal decree, and a rookie's confession, and an old man leaving his post to make it right. And the young man 3 blocks over has none of those things. He has a camera on his door that he bought the way other people buy an umbrella, and a habit of checking his mirror, and a hope that if it ever happens to him, somebody will be watching who understands what they are looking at. Maybe it is changing. Maybe one gala, one decree, one reopened complaint moved it an inch. Maybe the next officer who sees a man standing beside a nice car in the dark thinks twice. Not because it's right, but because it's recorded. Because somewhere, a judge made the cost of it too high to ever file away in a drawer again. But the young man in the driveway doesn't have a program with his face on it. And so the story of the man with the invitation ends well. And the question that this story leaves sitting on the table, the one it will not answer, because the answer is not written yet, is what happens to the man without one. Recording, just in case. So let me leave you with a few questions tonight. And I genuinely want to hear your answers in the comments. First, Adrian never once said the words, "I'm a judge." Was refusing to pull rank the right thing to do? Or does that choice only work when you actually have a rank to refuse? Second, that officer truly believed he was quota. The line, does his sincerity make what he did better? Or worse? And third, the one I really want you to sit with, the judge had 17 cameras and a foundation full of witnesses. The young man 3 blocks over has a doorbell camera and a hope. So what actually protects him? Tell me down below. If this story moved you, share it with one person who needs to hear it. And subscribe, so the next one finds you too. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. This is a work of fiction. All persons, departments, cities, and events depicted here are entirely invented, and any resemblance to real people or agencies is purely coincidental.